Last week was our first playoff game, and my plaque psoriasis was so itchy under all my gear. Sometimes just thinking about scratching could take me out of the moment. And then my doctor told me I could get clearer skin with a pill called Otezla.
Otezla apremilast is a prescription medicine used to treat adult patients with plaque psoriasis for whom phototherapy or systemic therapy is appropriate. Otezla can help you get clearer skin after just 4 months.
Okay, ready for the next game. Talking to my doctor about a pill was a total game changer.
Don't use Otezla if you're allergic to it. Get medical help right away if you have trouble breathing or swallowing, swelling of the face, lips, tongue, throat, or arms. Severe diarrhea, nausea or vomiting, depression, suicidal thoughts, or weight loss can happen. Tell your doctor if any of these occur and if you have a history of depression or suicidal thoughts. Live in the moment. Ask your doctor about Otezla. Call 1-844-4-OTEZLA or visit Otezla.com for prescribing info about cost, and more.
The Other Side of Midnight.
77 WABC.
Local Spotlight.
Good morrow, everyone. This is The Other Side of Midnight on 77 WABC. I'm Frank Morano. Thank you for listening. Governor Kathy Hochul gave her State of the State address yesterday, and for a moment, I thought it was Rudy Giuliani giving the speech. Why? Because she announced that starting immediately, NYPD officers will be posted on every single overnight subway train from 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. for the next 6 months. This is a bold move, one that reflects the reality that no matter what the statistics may say, people in this city don't feel safe. Here's what she said during her address.
I want to see more uniformed police officers, not just on the platforms, but more importantly, on every single train overnight, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. for the next 6 months. And the state will support these efforts financially because we have to stop the chaos.
Now, I know some critics will argue that subway crime isn't as bad as it was in the 80s or the early 90s, and they'll point to data showing decreases in certain types of crimes, but you can't argue with perception. And perception matters because it's what dictates how we live our lives. If you're a nurse heading home after a late shift or a student riding the train to an overnight job, you deserve to feel as safe as someone commuting at noon. For too long, New Yorkers have told me they feel like they're taking their lives into their hands just stepping onto a train. This isn't just about stopping violent crimes like the horrific attack in December where a woman was set on fire in Brooklyn. It's about the smaller day-to-day things, like someone menacing you for money or being subjected to harassment. These incidents might not always make the headlines, but they erode our sense of safety. Hochul's plan is ambitious. 2 officers on every train overnight. That's a lot of manpower, and yes, it's going to cost the state plenty. But if this works, it will be worth every penny. And it's not just police. She's also calling for brighter LED lighting in every station and platform barriers in 100 more stations. These are measures that will improve safety and security for everyone, not just during the overnight hours. Mayor Adams had a great line about this. He said, there are many rivers that feed the sea of violence. You have to dam each one of them. The governor is taking a step in the right direction here, and New Yorkers shouldn't have to choose between riding the subway and feeling safe. If Hochul sticks to this plan, maybe, just maybe, she'll give us the sense of safety that's been missing for far too long. It's not Rudy Giuliani's New York anymore, but yesterday Hochul sure sounded like she was ready to bring back some of that law and order attitude. Tells me she's worried about her prospects in 2026.
Beam me up!
To be continued.
The Other Side of Midnight.
77 WABC.
Local Spotlight.
Good morrow, everyone. This is The Other Side of Midnight on 77 WABC. I'm Frank Morano. This is one of the most heartbreaking stories I've come across in a long time. A 14-year-old boy, Caleb Rios, was stabbed to death in an unprovoked attack on his way to school. The accused killer, Waldo Mejia, is a man with a long history of schizophrenia, a man who refused treatment, and a man whose family desperately tried to get him help, but hit roadblock after roadblock. I can't even begin to bring myself to read the details of this story out loud because it's too upsetting. But this tragedy shines a spotlight on a failure so glaring, so inexcusable, that it demands immediate action. We need to get the severely mentally ill off the streets and into treatment, period. This isn't about politics, and it shouldn't be up for debate. It's about protecting innocent lives like Caleb's and providing help to those who are too ill to help themselves. Waldo Mejia's story is a case study in how broken the system is. His family pleaded for years for help. His mother made calls. His stepbrother urged him to take his medication, and even after arson charges and multiple brushes with the law, nothing changed. He went untreated, and a young boy is dead because of it. This isn't just an isolated incident. It's a pattern. Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch said it best. The systems that we have in place to deal with repeat offenders and individuals with severe mental illness continue to fail us. How many more tragedies like this have to happen before we admit the current system just doesn't work? Families shouldn't have to fight this hard to get help for their loved ones. People like Waldo Mejia are clearly a danger to themselves and others and shouldn't be allowed to refuse treatment. Mayor Eric Adams and Governor Kathy Hochul have said they're working on making it easier to involuntarily hospitalize people who need mental health care. That's a start, but it's not enough. We need real mechanisms to ensure these individuals stay in treatment, not just for a few days, but long enough to stabilize and get better. Some will argue that this infringes on personal liberty. But what about the liberty of a child walking to school? What about the liberty of every New Yorker to live without fear of random, senseless violence? It's time to stop prioritizing ideology over common sense. Caleb's death is a tragedy that didn't have to happen, and it's a wake-up call. We need to act now before another innocent life is lost. Schizophrenia is a disease to be treated, not a civil right to be protected. To be continued.
The Other Side at Midnight.
77 WNBC.
Local Spotlight.
When Eric Adams ran for mayor, he promised to rein in the NYPD's runaway overtime spending. Specifically, he pledged to cut it in half. He vowed to identify officers gaming the system and hold them accountable. It was the kind of promise New Yorkers wanted to hear from someone with decades of law enforcement experience. But now, 2 years into his administration, overtime spending has skyrocketed to record levels. This is more than a failure, it's a betrayal of trust. Current and former police officials say the blame lies with a breakdown in the chain of command, fueled by Adams' own mismanagement. Rather than empowering his police commissioners to lead, Adams allowed direct intervention from City Hall. This created a power vacuum and opened the door to dysfunction and, yes, overtime abuse. We've seen scandal after scandal, like the case of a deputy commissioner reportedly earning overtime, something that's not even allowed under NYPD rules, or the former chief of department, Jeffrey Madry, allegedly signing off on overtime for a subordinate he was accused of trying to coerce. And yet, Adams keeps claiming his hand-picked team, often friends and allies, has the experience necessary to lead. The result? Overtime spending is up 60% since 2022, even as the city slashes other essential services. We're spending nearly double on police overtime compared to what we allocate for our parks. And let's not forget, this is a mayor who campaigned on making government more efficient. Adams has tried to deflect by blaming protests and public safety demands. Sure, protests accounted for about 15% of overtime costs earlier this year, but that doesn't explain the rest of this bloated spending, nor does it justify the lack of accountability within the department. Now we have a new police commissioner, Jessica Tisch. She's implementing stricter oversight, including monthly overtime caps and compliance officers. These are promising steps, but they're not revolutionary. These controls already existed in previous administrations. The difference? Back then, the chain of command was respected. The dysfunction within the NYPD isn't just an administrative issue, it's a public safety issue. When chaos reigns at the top, it trickles down, affecting the morale of officers and the trust of the communities they serve. Mayor Adams said himself, the mayor is responsible for the city. On this, I completely agree. The buck stops with him. But so far, he's shown he's better at making promises than keeping them. Let's hope Commissioner Tisch can get this runaway train back on track because under Adams, it's been nothing but excuses, mismanagement, and failure.
Beam me up.
To be continued.
The Other Side at Midnight.
77 WABC.
Local Spotlight.
New York City has always been a place of innovation, resilience, and let's face it, some good old-fashioned rebellion. And nowhere is that spirit more alive today than in the growing debate over speed cameras. When these cameras were first introduced, we were told they were a tool for safety, meant to slow down drivers in school zones during school hours. A noble idea, right? But here we are, years later, and speed cameras are everywhere. They're no longer confined to school zones. They're on 24 hours a day, and instead of being a safety measure, they feel like a 24/7 tax machine targeting middle-class New Yorkers and the outer boroughs. Well, we seem to be bearing the brunt of these speed cameras. It's hard to ignore how these cameras disproportionately dot our neighborhoods. You see them a lot more in the outer boroughs than you do in Midtown Manhattan. And let's not forget, these are the same middle-class folks who are already grappling with skyrocketing living costs and about to shoulder the new congestion pricing fees. How much more can we ask of them? You can only squeeze the same people so much before they reach their breaking point. This brings me to an unusual story that recently landed in my inbox. Listeners have sent me photos in the last day or so of what some are calling the beautification squad. These are vigilantes, no other way to put it, planting flowers, seeds, and greenery in front of speed cameras. Their stated mission is to beautify the city. But the not-so-hidden consequence? These obstructions block the cameras, potentially sparing drivers from hefty speeding tickets. Now, let me be clear. I can't condone obstructing law enforcement technology. As someone who takes pedestrian safety very seriously, my stepmother was nearly killed by a speeding driver 5 years ago when she was walking around. I know the devastation reckless driving can cause, but I'd be lying if I said I don't understand the frustration that's driving this so-called beautification movement. At some point, we have to ask, are these cameras really about safety? Or are they just another way to milk every last dime from hardworking New Yorkers? The fact that some people feel compelled to take such action should be a wake-up call to city leaders. In the meantime, if you're curious about this unusual act of rebellion, I'm posting some of the photos that were sent to me on my Twitter account right now at Frank Morano. That's Frank, Morano. Apparently, the squad has hit at least 30 locations so far. Check it out and let me know what you think. But whether you see this as a creative protest or a dangerous stunt, one thing is clear. The people of this city are fed up. Maybe it's time City Hall started listening.
Beam me up.
To be continued.